Hello and welcome. This video is for you if you're new to Commander and you need some help entering the format. I consider anyone who's been playing less than 6 months a new player. Maybe you have some friends that play Commander and you want to join in. Maybe you used to play Magic back in the day, but haven't played in some time. Or perhaps even you've already bought a Commander pre-constructed deck and you want to step up your game a bit. In this video, I am going to show you how to avoid the most common pitfalls that newer players fall into. And by the end of the video, I'm going to provide you with 3 powerful, fun, and most importantly, budget-friendly decks to choose from so that you can hit the ground running and actually give your more seasoned opponents a run for their money so that you and your friends can have a positive and enjoyable gameplay experience. Basically, by watching this video, you're going to set yourself up for success and fun playing Commander. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. This isn't going to be me teaching you how to play Magic the Gathering. For this video, I am going to assume you already know how to play the game and you have a basic understanding of how it works. This is more of just a guide to help newer players start off on the right foot. Okay, let me begin by saying, on behalf of the entire Commander community, there's literally hundreds of thousands of us, oh my gosh, we are so excited to have you here with us. Welcome, come on in, the door is wide open, and I cannot wait to share with you this game that is one of the great loves of my life besides my wife and my cat. Also, kiss your fucking wall goodbye. Okay, the very first thing you should know is don't buy pre-constructed Commander decks. If you watch the Command Zone, which I don't know if you know, is the most popular Commander-focused Magic the Gathering channel on YouTube. They will tell you that Wizards of the Coast products, including Precons, are great investments of your money. The hosts of the Command Zone are considered by many as the high authorities on all things Commander because their channel is run by the best video editors I have ever seen. I mean, holy shit, look at that. And they have celebrities and other prominent members of the community on their show. Their overall content quality is 11 out of 10. No other Commander channel even comes close. They're also sponsored by Wizards of the Coast, the company that makes the game. So that's the Command Zone. If you go into a game store and you tell the store clerk that you want to buy a Commander deck to start playing Commander, they will happily sell you a Precon. What they won't tell you is that in terms of playability and power level, Commander Precons have long been the absolute floor in any metric of favorability and are not worth buying. It is not uncommon for Commander players to rate their deck's power levels on a scale from Precon to extremely competitive. The deck lists I'll provide you with by the end of this video blow the Precons out of the water and will actually start you at a similar level to people who have already been playing the game for a while. Number 2, card advantage is king. What do I mean by that? What is card advantage? In short, card advantage basically just means drawing cards or doing something similar to drawing cards, like searching your library for a card and putting it in your hand, or getting to look at the top 4 cards of your deck and keeping one of your choice. Long story short, if you're drawing more cards than your opponents, you're much more likely to win that game. This concept doesn't just apply to Magic the Gathering. In many other card games and board games, you put yourself at a huge advantage when you have more resources and options than your opponents. No matter what deck you're playing, it doesn't matter what the colors are, what the themes are, what your strategy is, you need to be drawing as many cards as possible to win the game. I cannot stress enough how important card advantage is. Write it down, take a screenshot, take a mental note, draw cards. Number 3, learn from your mistakes. A lot of times in the beginning, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna miss a trigger or forget to do something, or not realize you could have killed one of your opponents until you've already passed the turn. It's bound to happen. I've been playing for 7 years and I still make mistakes or suboptimal gameplay choices. One of the best things you can do as a player, and this is going to stay true no matter how long you play the game, is to accept when you've lost and ask yourself what you could have done better. Doing this will help you grow as a player. If you mess up a lot and it's never your fault, and it's always because your opponent is just a try-hard asshole and ruin the game for you, you're never going to learn and you're never going to grow and get better. Don't get me wrong, you will run into those games where despite your best efforts, you're going to get trounced either way. But you need to at least try to see what you could have done better for your own self-improvement. Number 4, and this is the most important rule, have fun, enjoy yourself, and like what you're doing. Otherwise, what's the point? Life is short and you only have a limited amount of time for this kind of stuff anyway. So if at any time you realize you're not having fun, maybe it's the deck you're playing, the people you're playing with, a particular group or whatever, do what you can to change it. Talk to the people, tell them you don't enjoy having your lands destroyed every game or having your spells countered over and over again ad nauseum so that you can't even do anything. Do what you can, but if talking openly about it doesn't resolve it, then it might be time to find a different play group. Okay, without any further ado, here are 3 powerful, fun, budget-friendly decks that are perfect for new players such as yourselves, and they are: Violence is usually the answer, Enchantress Land Lock, and Death of 1,000 Suns. The first deck is very combat-centric and simple to play. Xenagos, God of Revels, is the commander, and I can tell you from years of experience playing the God of Big Dumb Creatures that he is perfect for newer players who will enjoy winning the game by beating people to death with huge green and red creatures. This deck takes your already thick chunguses and makes them even bigger and meaner. On a scale of 1 to 10, I rate this deck a solid 5 in terms of power level. Mind you, I put Precons at about a 2, and I put my own competitive Chainveil Teferi deck that I have won commander tournaments with at about an 8.5. This deck packs a powerful punch, and it easily smokes any Precons you may go up against. You're going to start on an even playing field with your local game store regulars, and you'll actually be able to have fun and even win a few games. On a scale from 1 to 5, the complexity of this deck is a 1. It is incredibly simple to operate. This is essentially a Hulk smash type of deck. You just play your big creatures, use Xenagos to make them even beefier, and then you go to combat and just swing them into your opponents. If you want a strategy guide for this deck, it's this. Turn your creature sideways and don't think too hard. Deck tech coming soon. Total price of this deck is $86. Yes, it's a bit more than Precons, but if you're going to spend money on a Precon, you're going to have to spend even more money to upgrade it eventually so that you can hold a candle to the other decks you're going to be playing it against. That is kind of how they get you. They start you off with a seemingly cheap product, and they rely on you getting frustrated with losing to spend more money on singles to improve your deck. With these deck lists I'm providing you with, you'll at least have a playable, respectable, fun deck from the get-go. I want to skip your new player frustration phase and just jump right into your fun phase. But don't worry, you actually don't have to spend any money on magic cards if you don't want to. I'll also show you how to proxy, aka print your own magic cards for pennies on the dollar, but more on that later. Our second deck, Enchantress Landlock, is all about a deck archetype that is as old as Magic itself. The very first Enchantress decks actually came from the alpha printing in 1994. That was Magic's first printed set, And if you still have any cards from Alpha, you may be able to trade in your collection for a Rolls Royce or a 1,700 square foot house in Aurora, Colorado. This deck derives its name from the card Verduran Enchantress, which allows us to draw a card whenever we play an enchantment. Our commander is Sythis, Harvest's Hand, and she does just that. In this deck, we're going to be drawing a lot of cards from our enchantments, and we will eventually lock our opponents out of using their lands with a nasty 2-card combo. On a scale from 1 to 10, I give this deck a solid 6 on the power level. It slaps a little bit harder than our Xenagos deck, but in a slightly different way. Instead of crushing our opponents with brute force, we're going to smother them to death with removal spells and then slowly bury them alive with card advantage. We're going to slowly erode away their most valuable game pieces while simultaneously pulling ourselves ahead by drawing a lot more cards than our opponents. Eventually, we will lock them out completely with our land lock combo, which I will explain in greater detail in the written primer. On a scale from 1 to 5, the complexity of this deck is a 2. It's not difficult to play, but you will have to actually employ some strategy and plan your moves. This deck is a bit more versatile than violence is usually the answer, and it gives you more options on how you would like to go about playing the game or deal with threats. The total price is $98. Our third deck, Death of a Thousand Suns, is leaps and bounds more powerful and cost efficient than the other 2 decks I've just gone over. This deck is quite different in playstyle than the other 2, especially the Xenagos deck. This deck doesn't really rely on creatures attacking to win the game. In fact, the deck list currently only has 6 creatures total, because that's all you need, including the commander. Instead of winning through combat damage, our win condition for this deck is to actually do an infinite amount of damage to our opponents with what's known as a burn spell. Burn spells have variable costs and do as much damage as you have mana to put into them. Earlier, we covered the importance of card advantage and drawing cards. No one draws more cards than our commander, Mizzix of the Is Magnus. This deck, it does everything. It draws cards, it counters spells, it removes hostile attacking creatures, it casts multiple spells per turn, it lets you replay your best spells from your graveyard, it burns your opponents to death, and most importantly, it is a blast to play it. I've been playing Mizzix for 6 years, and to this day, he is still one of my favorite commanders ever. On a scale from 1 to 10, I rate this deck a concrete 7. Maybe even 7.5. This deck is incredibly fast, adaptive, and gives you sort of a veil of unpredictability. You can bluff your opponents and psych them out. They never know what to expect from you when you're playing this deck, and you can often use that to make deals and gain a modicum of political power in your games. Really, the only potential drawback may be that it can be sort of complex, and you need to understand a few things about how sorceries and instants work, and more importantly, how the stack works. I give this deck a 3 out of 5 on the complexity scale. And the total price is only $75. That's a whole $11 and $23 respectively less than the other 2 decks I mentioned. Blue-red Spellslinger decks like this really do give you the most bang for your buck. Money going into a blue-red instants and sorcery deck is probably money better spent than money going into one of the other 2 decks I just mentioned, just because there's a lot of cheap spells, both in terms of price and mana cost, that draw you a lot of cards or counter a spell or some other highly impactful effect. So if this is the most powerful deck and costs the least amount of money, why should you even consider playing and or buying one of the other 2 decks? Because your preference for playstyle and personal gameplay experience matter. Yes. Personally, I enjoy playing Mizzix very much. In my opinion, he is one of the best commanders out there and is an excellent choice for new players to start with, but maybe you would enjoy beating people up with creatures more, or maybe you would enjoy drawing a lot more cards than your opponents with one of Magic's first deck archetypes. The choice is yours. Commander is all about having fun and expressing yourself. If you would rather crush people with brute force or dominate the board with enchantments and creatures instead of casting a flurry of instants and sorceries, that is entirely up to you. But just because I labeled the Mizzix infinite damage deck as being more complex than the other two, do not be intimidated. If casting all those spells sounds like fun, go for it. Choose that deck. Play that deck and gain some experience along the way. Do what I did. Play the deck, trust that it is a good deck, and stick with it. And just so you know, I'm not just some schmuck on the internet giving you poor advice. I mean, I am a schmuck on the internet, but I'm a schmuck with some credibility. I've won several Commander tournaments at my local game store and at various board game conventions like KublaCon. I got top 4 at a CDH tourney during Magic Fest Las Vegas in 2019. And most recently, I participated in Marchesa 2021, the largest online competitive Commander tournament ever. And I didn't win as much as I would have liked, but I still did manage to win a couple games with one of my favorite decks that a lot of people consider to be outdated.
You do love it.
Love that username, by the way.
Mox Cardboard is
I
pretty
love
good.
that.
War of Invention on the stack. Are we getting Chainveil? Is it Chainveil time? It's got to be Chainveil time.
It's got to be Chainveil time.
Taking the win, mono blue.
Chainveil to Fairy. You know, this is something you definitely see in tournaments. Good old mono blue.
Love to see it.
Love to see it.
So now you have some more choices. You can go buy these awesome MCTV approved decks that I've laid out for you, or you can go with the precons, or maybe you have no monetary budget because you'll be printing out your own Magic cards and you want to play the most optimized versions of these decks possible. I will leave all of that up to you. Some people like to have quote unquote real cards that were printed by Wizards of the Coast, and they may or may not run into play groups that don't like to play against you if you have printed proxies. The best thing to do in any of those scenarios is to just ask. Always ask before you sit down to play a game. Communicate with your fellow players. If you want a deck with real cards printed by Wizards of the Coast and you think that's a good use of your money, go for it. If you don't mind printing out your cards and neither do the people you're playing with, go for it. The choice is entirely up to you. In the description of this video, I will link all 3 of the deck lists we've just gone over, along with budgetless, superpowered versions of those 3 decks in case you decide to proxy. I will also link a tutorial on how to go about printing your own deck for about $8 in less than 3 minutes, if that is what you want to do. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions at all, you can reach out to me directly in the MCTV Discord. Link in the description. If you bought a precon or one of the decks I suggested, or maybe you went with a completely different deck that you found online and you want to know what cards you can put in it to upgrade the deck, at me in the Discord. I will take a look at your deck list and I will let you know what I think. If you're having trouble with the deck or have any questions at all, I am always here to help. As always, thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. I will see you in the next one.